For those of you looking to achieve the highest level of human health possible, unfortunately, more than 90% of doctors are completely underqualified to practice the type of medicine that we need in order to get there. Over the last decade, I've been a patient on the bodily optimization side, and I've seen all of the shortcomings and received all of the bad advice that most of you are still getting today. Now, over the last several years, I've transitioned into the medical field myself, and I've interviewed hundreds of doctors for my own company, and I've seen just what's wrong with the medical industry, and in this video, I'm uncovering everything to save you guys the next 10 years so you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. The most important mistake people make in their medical journey starts before they ever take anything, and it's who they pick to guide them down the path. There's right now people that are completely going in blind, buying random research chemicals or pharmaceuticals off the internet and just taking them themselves with no medical guidance at all. And then there's the other side where people are saying, I'm only going to go through my primary care physician who has no background in this type of medicine, nor did they teach him anything about this in medical school. But he's got a PhD, so he must know what he's talking about. The key is to find the best specialists to only be the ones who are helping you, and I'm going to teach you how to identify that in this video right now. Before we get started, it is important to note that I'm not a doctor and nothing I say in this video should be misunderstood with medical advice. And if you are going to follow through with any of the things I'm going to talk about in today's video, make sure you're only doing so under the direct supervision of a specialist in the field of that medicine. Now, let's get into it. A long time ago, I fell for it too. I believed that anybody with a medical degree, there was no reason to ever question whether or not they knew what they were doing. If they said that this is what we needed to look at to solve my problems, I was going to follow that advice to a T. It wasn't until about 3 to 4 years into my optimization journey that I realized some of the information I was being fed by these so-called experts wasn't true. And I was so brainwashed at the time that I even gave them grace on this. I was like, okay, they make mistakes, or maybe they just didn't know this new information, or maybe this is different from my exact scenario and that's why they gave me this. So I started asking them, why did you guys give me these things when all of this data and information says it doesn't do what you told me? The exact example I'm talking about is something I've referenced in an earlier video, and it's actually why I'm making this video today. In a recent video, I talked about a doctor that initially started me on Clomid, clomiphene citrate, as well as Gonadorelin. In that video, I went over exactly why those are some of the biggest red flags for anybody who's in hormone optimization. Is if your doctor is prescribing you Clomid, they probably don't have any clue of what goes on in the hormonal space, because Clomid and clomiphene citrate, they're the same thing by the way. Clomid has the biggest side effect profile of any of the hormone optimization. The only reason someone would use it is if they were uneducated or if they were trying to maximize profits, because it's very cheap, but most people sell it for the same price as something like N-clomiphene, which doesn't have nearly as many problems. Now, this was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, but I didn't know it at the time, because it sent me down a path of just aggressive experimentation and aggressive acquisition of knowledge, because I never wanted to have this problem again, because I was fearful for my fertility. The biggest thing I was experiencing was they had me on Gonadorelin. Gonadorelin, which they were pitching as this fertility medication, has literally nothing to do with improving sperm count, sperm quality, or any ability to produce sperm. So here I am on TRT at 23 years old, by the way, because I was not brought up the option of enclomiphene, which would have been far superior for what I needed at that time. Because if you know anything about bodily optimization and hormones right now, the reason a 23-year-old has low testosterone under 300, which is the only way you're getting prescribed at that age, is if they're having a blockage from their pituitary gland, which comes from endocrine disruptors. Now, we're going to get into this a little bit later, but had they had any actual experience or knowledge in this field, they would have picked that up from a mile away and not put me on freaking TRT at 23 years old. Now, could I have stopped afterwards, and can I probably stop today? Absolutely, but I just think it could have been handled better. Back to the main point, they put me on Gonadorelin, which Gonadorelin only helps with testicular atrophy, which is just the shrinkage of the testicles that happens when you go on TRT because they're not producing any more sperm. Same reason being, Gonadorelin is way cheaper than the alternative that's going to actually keep your fertility, which is HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. A lot of hormone optimization clinics will only pitch Gonadorelin because the margin that people make on Gonadorelin is drastically higher than HCG. HCG is owned by one company that owns the patent, and they charge a lot of money, so pharmacies make all the money in the transaction. Nobody makes any money from selling it to a consumer. This is where I got really angry with the medical field, when I realized literally all of it is for money. There is no implication, or there is no desire for anybody in the medical industry to actually try to assist patients in living healthier lives. It is only, let's make a problem or find a problem and then sell a solution, or a real solution solution that costs a shit ton of money. Moving to my next point, which is for those of you that aren't even seeing a hormone specialist, you are the much greater problem at hand right now. Because when you go to your primary care provider, what they're gonna tell you when you get your blood work done, if they're even willing to test your testosterone. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and go down the rabbit hole with you about all of the problems that solving hormonal balance resolves, but it is one of the largest threats to the medical industry, and it's why I believe testosterone has been so scrutinized for so long. We're only now seeing reform in this area because it's becoming so mainstream. Point being, if you do finally get your doctor to go over your labs and tell you your testosterone results, whether you walk in there at 301 nanograms per deciliter or 905 nanograms per deciliter, both of those ranges are considered normal. Do you know what the difference is between someone at 301 and 905 in terms of what their output is and how they feel as a man? It is two completely different people, yet the medical industry looks at both as in range. So it's become completely useless to listen to the advice of these primary care providers because they're just gonna tell you in range unless you are clinically low. Take a regular 30-year-old guy. If a 30-year-old man is at 300 nanograms per deciliter, they are likely feeling flat, they have no motivation, they don't have nearly the sex drive that they should, and they're not gonna have anywhere near the ambition or the confidence to go out and achieve what they're capable of because their hormonal makeup is keeping them trapped in a cage. To make matters worse, if you ask your doctor about this and say, hey, I don't think I'm supposed to be this low, they're not gonna have any rebuttal for it. Now, there's a lot of different theories as to why the range is what it is today. 10 years ago, that was not the range. They've been moving it down every year because this is what they're allowing as the new normal. Now, if you don't think there's a conspiracy involved in that, we have a way bigger problem. Because what possible reason could the medical system have for intentionally lowering what is considered normal testosterone for men? During our parents' generation, the range was 500 to 1200. Where the average male testosterone was 700 nanograms per deciliter. If someone came into my practice with that today naturally and they're under the age of 35, they are like a 1 in a million unicorn because it doesn't exist today. Now, the reason for this is widely debated. I'll tell you guys what I think it is, as well as what the general consensus of the people in this field think it is, and that is endocrine disruption. Your endocrine system is your hormonal makeup. It decides what the hormone levels in your body are. We talked about this briefly earlier in the video where the pituitary gland is where all of the signal to create more testosterone starts. That signal that's created in the pituitary goes down to the testes and says, hey, we need to pump up our sperm production, our testosterone levels, because we need to be in prime physical state for both survival and mating. That is our innate purpose as human beings. Unfortunately, our modern society is packed with things that disrupt this signal, like plastics that emit xenoestrogens, meaning that we're literally blocking testosterone production and pumping our bodies full of estrogens. A lot of these plastics come from food packaging, water bottles, our clothes, and then there's a whole separate layer to this that involves birth control and our water supply. I'll spare you guys the tinfoil hat stuff, but the point is, without a doubt, we are 100% living in a world that is suppressing our hormonal balance. I don't know if it's intentional. All I know is it would be a very profitable accident to create a species of men who are much easier to control and obey than people who have high testosterone, think freely, and are willing to revolt. But I digress. Ideally, I like to keep my levels somewhere between the 800 and 1200 range. That's the therapeutic range when it comes to testosterone optimization. Anything above that typically becomes for bodybuilding purposes. We're not looking to do that here. The whole purpose is to operate in the best range for mind, body, and everything in between. Okay, next sign of working with a doctor that I would absolutely run away from is anyone who is pushing mind-altering drugs. When I say mind-altering drugs, I'm talking about things like ADHD medication, antidepressants, anti-anxiety pills, focus drugs, whatever it's gonna be. I think these are the devil. Simply put, I think there are so many better ways to improve all of the reasons for these drugs, but the only reason they get prescribed is because you are now with a doctor who is a slave to the insurance industry. And the insurance industry's game when it comes to these is get them on the first drug that they're gonna need to be on for the rest of their life, and then that drug is going to likely cause an additional problem. That problem that got created from that initial drug is going to be treated as its own individual problem. This process is called prescription cascade, where they treat the issue that got caused by the first medication they gave you as its own separate symptoms and disease, as opposed to just a result of the first medication. I'll give you an example about this because I know that was confusing. Let's say when you were a kid, for whatever reason, you didn't want to sit in a desk for 8 hours straight. So you were then prescribed legal meth, which is Adderall. All of a sudden you were laser focused, you didn't get distracted by anything, and your grades started to improve. So your parents said, okay, great, we're gonna keep you on this forever. Now you're 30, 35, 40 years old, and you've been on Adderall for so long and you can't operate without it. But something happened along the way. All of a sudden your brain's internal reward system didn't work the same as it did when you were a kid. Because what that Adderall's been doing is destroying your dopamine system so that you can't react to anything pleasure seeking except focusing on your exact target all the time. Well, now you need something to stimulate your emotional well-being. Then you get introduced to things like SSRIs. SSRIs are antidepressants. Their job is to react with your serotonin and your dopamine in order to create a more lively feeling and a more social feeling. But then something even weirder happens, is that after you're on that SSRI for so long, all of a sudden you're not getting sexual arousal the way that you used to. You can no longer get an erection on your own. So now you need an erectile dysfunction medication, or you're stuck in the blue chew hole where you can't have sex or you can't do anything without a honey pack or a blue chew or a Cialis or a what have you, because you fried your body's internal excitement response. You would think it stops there. But then you have the next issue in your 30s and 40s, where all of that blood pressure that's changed so much from your erectile dysfunction medication has now created a heart issue, and now you need a blood pressure medication, or heaven forbid, a statin, because you've sworn off cholesterol altogether because of your blood pressure problems. You see how this continues to unfold, and it goes all the way until you're in your 80s and 90s, just getting people on more and more pills. The second I hear a doctor say anything about you need to be on this prescription that is either mind-altering or a lifelong medication that is likely going to cause some additional problem, I am running away from that doctor immediately. They don't know what they're doing. They are not in your best interest. They are in the best interest of their paycheck and the insurance company. Let's say we wanted to solve the serotonin problem and solve the SSRIs, where everybody got described antidepressants. The easiest way to fix that, serotonin is produced where? In the gut. A real body optimization specialist would say, okay, let's look at your gut or do some sort of gut test to understand what's going on inside you. Not, okay, you're feeling sad, let's just medicate you so that you don't feel any sadness ever again. I've been lucky enough at my company to see people all the way in the hole come out and feel fantastic without needing to do any crazy elaborate treatment. All they needed was to fix their freaking gut. A regimen of things like probiotics, prebiotics, BPC 157, fermented foods. There's a million things you can do. You don't just have to jump to medication to try to numb the pain of any problems anyone's having. Now, if you really want to go down this path, why is everybody's gut so messed up in the first place? Now, if you ask your doctor this question, why is everybody's gut so messed up? You're going to get some deflection level answer because it's not something that was taught in his medical school program. The reason everybody's gut in America is so messed up is the same reason that we have almost all of our chronic disease problems, which is systemic inflammation. This is the root cause of almost all chronic disease in the United States. Whether we like it or not, the food that we eat, the water that we drink, and everything that we consume on a daily basis, whether that be household products, medicines, whatever, a lot of it causes systemic level inflammation. That problem pours gasoline onto an already burning fire within our gut. Synthetic dyes, preservatives, pesticides, all of these contribute to shredding the gut lining from the inside out. This typically causes a condition known as intestinal permeability or leaky gut. Way more people have this than they realize. Unfortunately, the only people who will ever learn about this are the people that have gone so far down the wrong path that their body can't process anything anymore, and they're just spewing toxic waste and chemicals throughout their body. The immune system panics and triggers a huge wave of inflammation to try and suppress and combat those toxic fluids. This shuts down the brain's ability to create any level of energy, any level of serotonin, as well as any functioning brain power. You can see where this cycle just creates more and more problems on itself when the real answer has always been, why don't we just stop the inflammation? Crazy concept where the leading cause of almost all chronic disease that we're facing as human beings in America is caused by this one thing, but we're never gonna target that one thing that's gonna solve all our problems. No, we're gonna numb the pain of all the problems that we're experiencing because that's far more profitable and it's forever. This is the unfortunate truth that I found the hard way, and that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans are realizing more and more by the day, because the difficulty comes in that nobody figures this out until they experience it for themselves or they witness a loved one have the problem, where they get trapped in the medical machine where they're being force-fed all these different medications and all these different treatments that never actually work and just further their problems. And all it does is create a recurring business model where that person has to keep going back and getting more and more medication. But what do? Are we just trapped as a society? I'm never using a doctor again. I'm gonna do everything on my own. If there is any advice that I can give anybody watching right now, it is that every single person's body is different. The advice that works for even 80 or 90% of people out there, somehow it always ends up that that's not gonna work for you and your body specifically. Every body has a different condition. Your makeup of your DNA is entirely different than anybody else's on the planet. Even your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, does not matter. You have to be guided down this path on your own. Taking the advice of just what the internet says can get you further than this side, than the doctor side, but it leads to even bigger problems, because when you start solely following the advice on the forums that are out there or from the optimization specialists on the internet, what happens is you very quickly realize what works for them doesn't work for me. The only way to really get this down is a few things. Number one, blood work and diagnostics is the only answer to truly know what's going on in your body before you can pick a protocol that is going to make sense for you. The number one question I get asked in my DMs, in my comments, in everything is, what peptide should I take for X? What treatment should I do for Y? I don't know, right? I could sit here and make a really educated guess based on what I know. And if you have just a really simple question, sure, I can probably answer it. But the real answer only lies in, what does your blood work say? What are you deficient in? Or what is out of range? The second half to that is you need a doctor who knows what the right range is. Because when you go and you look at the regular lab ranges, everything's gonna come up green, or some of the things that are showing up red might actually be where you want them to be. You need to have some sort of specialist that understands exactly what these biomarkers really mean from a full body optimization perspective. It cannot be somebody who just has a medical degree, is in a primary care office, has been practicing for the last 20, 30 years the same way. It's not gonna work. This is the exact reason that I created my company in the first place. And this video is not about me telling you guys that you should all go sign up and go become a member of Overtime. I'm just telling you that the reason that my company exists in the first place is I have seen exactly what the shortcomings of the medical industry are and how little knowledge these people have. And my biggest problem with it is that they openly admit it. In the interview process for this company, like I said, I interviewed hundreds of doctors, and it's become abundantly apparent to me that not only do they not know what they're doing, but they talk about not knowing what they're doing amongst each other, and a lot of them are just making guesses, which is why people end up with so many problems on this side. The only people that I can trust to have the best interest in my body are people that have gone off and learned on their own outside of medical school. The problem is a lot of doctors don't want to do that, or they think they already know everything there is to know because they got some high level of education. Medicine is changing all the time. What is true today might not be true tomorrow. Certainly what was true 5 years ago, almost none of it is applicable today. So the number one piece of advice I can give for anybody who's looking for someone to guide them down a path of functional medicine, regenerative medicine, integrative medicine, whatever it's going to be, find somebody who's up to date. Find somebody who's constantly seeking to learn the new methods, who's looking outside of the traditional American medical system and learning from people who have real expertise in these niche fields. This has been by far the greatest shift I've ever made. I brought in my first real expert to my company about 2 years ago. And on that day, I said, look, if you're gonna be handling our patients, I need to know that I can fully trust you and that I would use you before you get to talk to anybody else. And brother, the difference between having someone who has this side of it, the medical side, the background side, but also this side of it where they've done the experimentation themselves, they're constantly learning for the things that aren't really appreciated by this side, and they can bring the two together. It is a world of difference, and this is where you see people actually become the healthiest and best versions of themselves. And I can confidently say today that I am the healthiest and in the best physical and mental condition that I've ever been in my entire life. It's not a coincidence that all of Hollywood seems to age backwards and keep their cognition into their old age, and some of these actors and actresses keep acting into their 90s and 100s, while the average 90 and 100-year-old in America can barely walk and form a complex thought. And the most important lesson in all of this is if you think this doesn't apply to you and that what you're doing is just okay, or it's fine, or no alarms are going off right now, you are the exact person who needs to make a shift right this second. Like I said, I don't care if it's with me and my company, I don't care if it's with somebody else, but don't let yourself end up as a statistic falling into the cog of the medical machine, because the number one thing that all of these doctors say, the ones that really know what they're doing, is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Meaning that if you can get ahead of all of these problems, None of them come to fruition. You don't end up with Alzheimer's. You don't end up with arthritis or cancer or any of these problems that come years later if you take the proper precautions now. You are going to spend significantly less preventing these problems from happening, because when you see the bill for trying to reverse them, it is uncanny. It puts people into medical debt for the rest of their lives. So look, guys, if you're interested in improving the mind, the body, and all things human optimization, I post 2 videos just like this every single week where I put out a new bit of knowledge that has helped me in my journey. All you guys got to do, if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button, make sure you turn on post notifications, and I will see you guys in the next one.